All right, welcome back and thank you so much for staying with us. You're still watching TV47 Breakfast, and if you're just joining us, we are getting into our third segment of the day today, and we want to focus on domestic violence and protection orders. It appears that there is growing concern when we're talking about domestic violence in the country. A lot of cases are being reported, ranging from gender-based violence, cases of femicide. We have online harassment, cyberbullying from partners or even ex-partners. We have violence affecting children in homes, among other things. So these are just some of the issues that we want to be talking about this morning. And if at all victims do know where and how they can get protection, if at all they are assaulted or abused. And of course, if at all they do know their rights. And Wakili Ruth Tanu is with us this morning in studio to help us really understand what protection orders are and what we need to understand when we're talking about domestic violence. Karibu sana Wakili.
Thank you for having me.
I haven't seen you in a long time. How are you?
It's been a while. Yes. I'm good.
All right.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
I want us to go direct,
yeah.
To domestic violence in itself. What counts as domestic violence? Because when we talk about, DV, domestic violence, a lot of us always think about, the physical assault in itself.
Yes.
But looking at it legally, what counts as, domestic violence?
So domestic violence, as has been, there you have said, people just assume it has to be physical for it to be termed as domestic violence. But in reality, domestic violence, especially as has been defined under the Protection Against I'd like calling it PADVA, Protection Against Domestic Violence Act, 2015. It has given a broad definition to domestic violence, which include, apart from physical violence, sexual violence, economic abuse. That's something most people don't consider as domestic violence because, for instance, your husband making you not to go to work so that they can control you in one way financially. That's considered, it also falls under domestic violence. Even emotional abuse. Then you have said even stalking, intimidation, when you have talked about online harassment, like someone maybe sending you texts, threatening texts, that falls under domestic violence. Yeah, it's not only about being, someone doesn't have to get physical for you to term it as domestic violence. Yeah.
Are there cases that are not recognized in law? Because I'm looking at it from really just a broader perspective. If, like I said, a lot of us just equate domestic violence to physical assault, then perhaps there have been gaps in the way domestic violence is communicated, to people, to Kenyans, each and every person in the country. Then are there cases that don't legally qualify as domestic violence in courts?
No, before the act is when there were a lot of gaps, before the PADVA Act, Prevention Against Domestic Violence Act, because now people had to rely on the Penal Code or the Sexual Offences Act, which narrowly defined what domestic violence is. But now with PADVA, at least things, it has broadened it. So it becomes, so what happens is, I normally say, it will depend, best court is the one that will determine. For instance, if you have taken a case where you're seeking maybe protection orders or temporary protection orders, court will determine what falls into, what will fall under, what amounts to domestic violence. But I think also the problem now is who can you sue for domestic violence? Because they've just said the act defines it that people are in domestic relationship. I think now that's where the most issue comes in. Like, because when you go and say someone, you're claiming there's domestic violence against, you are maybe suing someone, that person has to be in a domestic relationship with you. So sometimes now court has to, like before court proceeds or makes a decision, they have to confirm that that person falls within the definition of domestic relationship. I think that's where now the major issue is. Yeah.
And I'd love for you now at that point to, to break it down for us extensively. The Protection Against Domestic Violence Act, as you call it, PADVA. Because when somebody, when I saw it, Protection Against Domestic Violence Act, to me it appeared like we are protecting the act in itself, but we're not protecting the people. That is how I interpreted it. But I really would like to understand if this particular act has been, sensitized, and if people have been sensitized enough to understand what this act is all about. Because somebody would understand it as, Domestic Violence Act, as short as that. But now we have Protection Against Domestic Violence Act. Then just break it down for us. Why Protection Against Domestic Violence Act?
Yeah, so first of all, to answer the question, I don't think people have been sensitized enough about it, because it came into law. I think it was Uhuru Kenyatta, I think, who made it into law in 2015, and but they took time in Parliament before it became into law, because now a lot of male parliamentarians would shoot it down because people felt
2015 or 2022.
It's 2015.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 2015.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of people are not sensitized about it. A lot of people don't even understand, don't even know that law exists in the first place. Yeah, but it was brought in because they have said before there were no good laws. Like before 2015, if someone was undergoing domestic violence, maybe with their husband and a wife, you had to just make an application using the other laws, seeking a restraining order. So sometimes it would become hard. And if you, as lawyers will tell you, getting a restraining order, it's limiting someone's right. So that's why it takes, like before it's granted to you, it normally, like court looks at a lot of factors. But at least with the enactment of the PADVA Act, at least that has simplified it. Because PADVA, first of all, they have said it has defined it has expanded the definition of domestic violence. It came in to protect victims. Even if you see the act itself, when the preamble itself, it says it protects victims who undergo domestic violence. Yeah, that was its sole purpose. Yeah, but now I think the major problem with it, they have said it's not well sensitized. There are no rules that have been brought. Like for instance, when we have laws, like for instance, you have the Civil Procedure Act, we normally have rules. Rules are more of a guideline, so that someone can know, like of course a layman cannot know, like I know there's that act, how does it protect me? Like someone cannot know, unless of course maybe, and some people don't afford lawyers, can't afford a lawyer to maybe file a case on their behalf. So I think that sensitization they've done the small claims court. They have tried to make it so simplified. I think the same thing should happen to the act. Make it so simplified to an extent that victims themselves can file cases in court. And then another thing, there are no courts that have been set aside for that.
Domestic violence.
Yeah, domestic violence. There are no courts, specific courts. Like right now, if someone is undergoing, even if someone walks into my office and we're supposed to file a case, we just file it, like for instance, now within Nairobi, we file it at Milimani. It's filed at the resident magistrate's court, so Milimani Magistrate's Court. And now, so this is a magistrate who's handling a lot of cases. With virtual court nowadays, someone might not even be comfortable, because now this is something other people will be listening in. So I think that's some of the things that I wish it would have been done, so that there are separate courts and maybe handle it. The way we have small claims, again I use small claims. There's specific courts for small claims matters. There are adjudicators or magistrates who handle small claims. So I think the same thing should be done. And then also people, because apart from court, you can go to the police, so that the police can lodge a criminal case. The police, they are no specific. They are not, I can say also most of them, they are not sensitized on how they handle it. So I'm just imagining if someone walks to the police station, of course you might report to some, I think maybe very few police stations I think have those specific desks for that. But now most don't, especially I'm outside Nairobi. Most of them don't.
Then Wakili, who is really dropping the ball? Because if you're talking about, we do have courts for, small claims. And small claims can be something like, your landlord, kwamilia your deposit. You can take that to, a small claims court. But something as critical as domestic violence, and we've been reporting these cases year in, year out, every month, literally, then you say we do not have a court to handle such an issue, then who is really dropping the ball in this case?
I think now it's supposed to be legislators, or they have said rules have to be, I don't think they have taken it that seriously, the way other legislations have been taken seriously, because you find, they are saying when most people are not aware of it. So it's supposed to be legislators, even like for instance now in the judiciary system, they're the ones supposed to put, for instance now for the Chief Justice supposed to put in courts specifically for that, to handle those matters. And then I also think people who handle it, like even magistrates who are handling those matters, should be trained, sensitized around it, because you don't handle a gender-based violence case as the way you would handle any other case. So you find someone has their own traditional values. For instance, if your matter lands before a magistrate who believes, women should be disciplined. Maybe that's their own tradition, that's what they believe in. You may find that this person might be biased. you may be seeking first a temporary order and they may deny it because of their biased values. And also another thing, also people don't, like, when you file a case in court, you need evidence. So most people, since it's something they are scared about, the stigma around it, you find you don't have enough evidence. So you file a case and you're seeking temporary orders, and maybe because you don't have enough evidence to prosecute that case.
All right.
Yeah.
Wakili, how serious is, domestic violence across, the country now? Looking at everything you're talking about, you say that this is not something that is being taken seriously, might not be taken seriously, and that is why maybe we do not have a court that is specific to handle cases of domestic violence. From where you sit, and somebody who is, at the corridors of justice, how serious are these cases?
They are very serious because, first of all, I think it's something that has been happening. Like, surprisingly, if you look at statistics that are done, like I was looking today online, 40% of women undergo it. Like 1 in every 3 women have undergone some form of domestic violence. Because they have said there are different forms. It doesn't have to be physical. Yeah, so it's something that I feel it's very serious. And also, people normally assume it's also for low incomes families. No, it goes across, even professionals. Someone assumes it has to be, it can be minimum, like I'm a literate person. There's no way I can undergo this. A lot of people undergo it. And also so I feel this is something that is very serious. And people don't talk about it openly. Like, I think a best example is Ivy Wangeshi. I remember the medical student at Eldoret. Remember, the boyfriend went and like killed her with an axe. If you look at comments online, like people were even, usikule fair mtu, and someone is dead. But people, you can just tell from how people are handling it, they are not taking it seriously. So of course, victims will not feel comfortable coming out or being open about what's happening. And you see now they have said currently in the news, it's very sad. Every morning you wake up, you look at the news. Every time you just look at the news, you hear about even femicides. And sadly, it's something that is seriously happening. So that's why when I bring out the angle of the law, I feel if the legal systems had been put well in place to assist in all this, because I don't know if people have followed up any femicide you have heard about. Has someone followed up to know that this person got justice? The family members, or even with any gender-based violence, have these people actually got justice? Because as much as we have the act, you are given the protection orders, sometimes people break those. Sometimes people don't take it seriously as they're supposed to. So I feel they are saying it's something that is very serious right now, and I call it a silent epidemic. Yeah, it's something that is all over, and I feel it should be talked about more. Our leaders should be talking about more measures should be brought. I don't think even there are enough safe houses, because you imagine a situation if someone is going through, like, let's say someone who is married or just in a partnership with someone, and the sad part is you may find this person is depending on this person financially. So someone will be like, where will I go? I have 3 children. I'm not working. Where will I go? And part of the act was safe houses to be created, but I don't think there are enough facilities that have been brought, especially for outside Nairobi. Or even if they are there, do people know where they are located? There's not enough information, in my opinion.
All right, so we are talking about 40% of women in the country who have experienced emotional, physical, or psychological intimate partner violence. We also have 30% of women and 19% of men believe a husband is justified in beating his wife under certain circumstances. And 34% of women aged 15 years to 49 years have experienced physical violence. And this is according to data by the UNESCO. Let's get some feedback. We're talking about domestic violence and protection orders this morning. TV47 Kenya on Facebook and on YouTube on X. It's TV47 Digital, and 0793267279 is our WhatsApp line. Let's sample some of your feedback this morning. Kevin from Embakasi says, my sister keeps going back to a violent relationship because she says she has nowhere else to go. What options are there for victims who feel trapped financially? All right. Thank you so much for that question. Faith says, I left an abusive marriage, but my ex still threatens me through calls and messages. Can a protection order stop this, and how long does it take to get one? Jane from Nyeri says, sometimes the abuse is not physical, but insults, threats, and humiliation every day. Does emotional abuse count in the eyes of the law? That is Jane. Mercy says, my neighbor is always crying after fights with her husband, but she denies everything when asked. How can family or neighbors help someone in denial without making things worse? All right, and finally we have Samuel from Kisumu. Samuel says, as a man, I experienced violence in my marriage but feared people laughing at me. Are men also protected, and where can they seek help? All right, thank you so much for your questions, and we do encourage you to keep sending them. 0793267279 on our WhatsApp line, and on X at TV47 Digital, on Facebook and on YouTube it's TV47 Kenya, and we'll be sampling your feedback one by one in the course of this broadcast. Wakili, before we go into this feedback that have just come in, there's a point you made at the very beginning when we were starting that for is it PADVA? The
Protection
Against Domestic Violence Act, that for a very long time it had stalled in Parliament because there are some men MPs, and then you stopped it there. Why? What were you saying exactly? Why did it stall?
I think it stalled because some people viewed it as a threat to families, and especially male. From a male perspective, they have said there are many males who feel like beating your wife is normal.
Yes.
Like I'm supposed, so they felt that this law is coming to attack them. So even I remember I was looking, I was saying now before it was actually enacted, the female leaders at that time had to try and bring out the fact that this is not for attacking anyone. It's actually coming in to protect people. It can be your sister, now telling them male, it can be your sister, it can be, so that's why it was coming in as protection. I think it's stalled for a long time because it's something that's happening now. It's stigma, the way even for there's one who was a man, like as a man, if you're undergoing domestic violence, people they look at you and be like, how? Like, yes. It's something that someone can't talk about it openly. So it becomes something that someone just dies with silently. Yeah.
Now that we know what counts as domestic violence, Wakili, we're talking about protection orders. Walk us through what this is, a protection order, and how one gets to a point where they now get access to a protection order.
Yeah, so I was even seeing someone who asked if someone is sending you threatening messages, can I go to court and get a protection order? Yeah, so the answer is yes. And even they were saying how soon. Normally when you file an application, you can even, what happens, you have to file under certificate of urgency. The application is, nowadays because of virtual court, it's easy. You'll upload it through e-filing. And sometimes you get even orders in hours, depending on how, but now just make sure your case is well, like for this, the one who asked is at least it's threatening messages. You can do the screenshots of the messages and then you attach them as part of the evidence. And normally court will give a temporary order first. Let me first talk about temporary before now the protective order, because temporary comes in most of the time first before they give the protective order. This is where court will give that temporary protection order. So for instance, this person who is being threatened with messages and everything, court will give a temporary order preventing that person from sending any messages. And normally court will take an extra precaution to give the police officer or probation officer around that area to further investigate it, to further investigate that situation. So that's, and at least now that will help, because now court, before giving a protective order, which is more of a final order, to prevent this harassment or whatever is happening, domestic violence, from continuing, all parties now, under the law, everyone has a right to be heard. So court, before giving a protective order, all parties will be heard. But now the good thing is you can first get we normally call it interim in the meantime, because you can't wait. The matter, that's another thing, backlog of cases. I've said there's no separate court. This magistrate is handling employment matters. This magistrate is handling commercial matters. So you may find like this matter may not be done within even 6 months. So that's why court normally brings in, puts in that interim order. So what you do, you file the application and support it. We call it a supporting affidavit. So normally an application is whereby you're seeking orders. So maybe your first order, I feel this one, you can, normally you don't need a lawyer to draft one for you, but it's very important when you're wording your application. I normally say, but I think court maybe give leeway when it comes to this. Court will not give you what you have not asked for. So you have to be very careful when you're wording your orders. So you ask the order, and then you do a supporting affidavit. Supporting affidavit is not now you put the evidence. Like for instance, now this lady, the one who asked about someone was harassing her, sending her messages, you do a supporting affidavit stating that this person, maybe we were married or we were partners. If you are married, you can even put a marriage certificate. If you are divorced, you can put a decree as evidence, and then you show, then you say this person has been threatening me, and you put the messages, attach the messages. So what court will do, court will give an interim order for this person to stop, first not to come close to you, to stop writing those messages to you, and now you can serve this person. And court, just maybe for protection purposes, because of course there's that threat, they can say the orders to be served through maybe the OCS of the nearest police station or any authority close, to make it, because you know it will be dangerous for especially a person who is self-representing. So court will just put in measures and seek for a report. So this report, of course, is going to guide court, and then now court will hear the matter fully and give a protective order. Yeah. So again, remember, court is a court of evidence. That's something people should also know. So that's why it's important to keep evidence. So if there's any evidence of, just make sure you're keeping evidence, photographs, if it's assault, if it's a continuation of harassment, and just put all the evidence. If it's medical, keep the P3 form or any documents that you have as evidence. It's very important to keep that evidence, because it's the ones that you'll attach as your evidence in court. Yeah.
But you know, in cases of domestic violence, Wakili, sometimes for people who are facing assault for the very first time, I don't think, you know, trying to keep evidence or keep tabs with what was happening in that particular time will be at the top of their mind, you know.
Yeah.
But now the question will be, how do they prove domestic violence in an order of protection hearing in this case? Because I've also heard of cases where, you know, these cases have been, say, zimekatizwa, because court says that, you know, there wasn't enough evidence. But for somebody who keeping evidence wasn't really top of mind at that time, say amepigwa na akaumizwa, it's just a one-time thing. It's not something that has always been happening in their marriage or union. Then how do they prove that there was domestic violence in that case?
Now that might be difficult, but I think if for instance now, let's say that person had walked into my office and we need some kind of evidence, of course, to support our application for a protection order. So the best thing, first of all, we can look for witnesses. If for instance it's a household where you have people living in the same household. Let's say that thing was happening in a household where there are other people. So we find out if those people can come in as witnesses. We just find other ways. And also, for instance, but you have said this person maybe has never reported, if in case this person maybe wrote to a friend, just a message that I'm not okay. It doesn't have to be even detailed. Such messages, you can use them. So, but sadly, they have said court is a court of evidence. So you, of course, will try you try as much as possible, have what you have. Also, you do also even in the affidavit, of course, you can still bring out in words what has happened. You can say, I've lived with this person, this has been happening. So you don't have to have, like at that point, you don't have to have concrete evidence. Well, but it's important to have. But that what I'm just trying to say is, let that not prevent you from seeking justice. Yes.
All right, let's see what Faith said, that she left an abusive marriage, but the ex is still threatening her, through calls and messages. And she was asking, can a protection order stop this? And how long does it take to get one?
Yeah, a protection order can do that. And that's what I was saying, the first thing you'll seek for temporary orders. Because protection orders are more final. So court has to have had all the parties look at all the evidence before making a decision. So, yes, a protection order can help her in this situation. And secondly, she can, for instance, now in this case, she's also asking how long will it take. Most of the time it can take, so long as you have sought for the interim order, can be given within even a day. Yeah.
There's somebody else who asked, does emotional abuse count in the eyes of the law? That was Jane from Nyeri.
Yes, emotional abuse counts, because remember when you were defining the way the PADVA Act has already defined that's now the major act that protects domestic violence victims. Yeah. So that's why we have already said emotional abuse falls under it. So yeah, it counts. So for she's asking whether it counts. Yeah, it counts. It's it's considered domestic violence. And that's why, and you don't have to wait for it to get to physical, because most people have this assumption, it's not, it's not bad. It's just still emotional, so maybe it doesn't. But at this point is when you can still seek for the protection orders, or maybe get out of that situation. Yes.
All right. Somebody also asked, how can family or neighbors help someone in denial without making things worse?
Okay, so under also the PADVA Act, court has listed who can file an application for a protection order.
Yeah.
So apart from the victim, relatives, friends can file on behalf of the victims. So sometimes, and even the Act knows, like sometimes, you know, you find the person who's going through it maybe does not want even to consent. Court can allow a third party person to file on behalf of the person who's undergoing it. So for the person who's asking how they can help, they can still file for the protection order on behalf of their family member. Yes.
What if a neighbor, still, you know, and that feedback from Mercy, what if a neighbor, you know, let me use myself as an example. I decide to file a protection order, you know, for my neighbor who is going through abuse. And then, you know, I get that, the police or wherever I get it from, and then my neighbor denies going through abuse. But me personally, nimekuwa nikisikia akipigana pale, then what happens in that case? What happens to me?
That can now become one of the cons or the disadvantages that comes in, because as much as you're filing an application against another party, remember this person has to be part of the case. So though in some instances, of course, court, but remember what I've told you, court normally involves third parties, like a probation officer, police officer, if a child is involved, a children officer, experts. So what court will do, let's say for you are filed as a neighbor, what court will do, if court might get a probation officer or a police officer who is placed under the gender-based violence docket in the police station to do an investigation. So you see, court will not only be getting the evidence from you, there will be also a third party involved. So investigations will be done by a professional or a third party who will be more of an expert. So this person will give court a report of what you have said, because of course you'll do an application saying on these days this has been happening, this has been happening, so they'll do a report. And of course if that is found to be true, court of course is going to put in measures. Yes.
But if at all, you know, in that case now there's no evidence for what I filed, then would I be held liable? Would I be arrested?
No.
Or what will happen to me?
No, you'll not be held liable or be arrested based on that, because, you know, this is a civil case. Civil case, you don't get, it was criminal is where you may be made to pay a fine or you are convicted for a certain period. But for civil cases, it doesn't lead to anyone being arrested. Yes.
In cases where, you know, the abuser is a breadwinner, you mentioned something about this, that sometimes, you know, victims stay if abusers, for example, do breadwinners, if, you know, they're the people who pay school fees and take care of rent and everything in between. But I'm wondering, in a case where, you know, you filed for a protection order, you maybe applied for a protection order, but this is somebody who is the breadwinner in your home, then what happens?
So normally court, based on the context of the situation, court will normally, you know, protection orders involves court can, it doesn't matter if that house belongs to him, he can be removed from that situation. Court can give an order for that person to leave. Based on this, especially if it's something dire, court can give, even the interim order court might give is for this person to leave the household, especially where, you know, part of domestic violence is psychological abuse for children, putting children in a situation where they hear the fights, the sexual harassments, the psychological torture that's happening in the household. So if court will look at the circumstances, if it's a married couple with kids, court, and this person is the one bringing, court will remove this person and give an order for this person not to come close. And remember, him paying school fees, he has to continue paying school fees for the kids. It doesn't mean because he has been removed from this situation, he can stop paying school fees. No, that part, court, like that cannot prevent, like, for this part. I think that's what people don't know. Like, even if that's why if you go to children's court, the Children Act comes in here, maintenance and custody. But here we are talking about maintenance. If there are many people who are divorced or separated, but the father still pays for the children's school fees. And if they don't pay, you go to court and they'll be ordered. For people even who work for government, their their salary is normally cut directly. Like it's something they have to do. So that's something also people need to know. Like if you're staying in an abusive situation because you're worried, you know, my kids will not go to school. But anyway, I know of course there are circumstances. It can just be not about also the school fees. It can be also about you cannot, because you know nowadays court, it has to be 50-50.
Yeah.
So there's no way you can leave a situation for you're not working. This person, maybe the only thing maybe court can order the father to do is pay school fees and deal with all school-related expenses, and maybe medical, put the child in medical insurance. You may be told to give food, shelter, to provide food, shelter. So that's also circumstances that I understand based on the way you have said people might be forced to stay in such a situation. But I would never advise someone to remain in a situation because also you can sue for economic abuse, especially if that one is making so clear. Some people normally say, someone says, najua mtu ataniua. Like they keep saying that statement, najua bwanangu ataniua siku moja. But they can't live because they feel that they can't, like, they don't have another way of doing it. So so for me, what I think, that's the unfortunate bit. That's why I think the act should be more implemented in a way that there should be safe houses for such people, whereby, you know, I think someone may just need a place to start over. So a place first where you're taken to be safe. Then now they should be in such institution. There should be also psychologists, make sure this person is in a good mental state, because you know just living in such a situation and maybe going to isolate yourself to live alone might not be the best solution. Or maybe this person can be placed with a family member who is capable of maybe supporting them for a while, whereby, you know, professionals are placed in this place to help these people. Those are some of the things it's some of the recommendation I wish were being implemented in a way that such a person, because this is the common one where someone can't live because of financial dependence. And then you cannot, even if you find this person, you're telling this person to go to court. They are court, you can go and sue them they can go and sue the perpetrator or in court, but now the problem is they may not even have the finances itself of filing that.
All right. Domestic violence and protection orders, that is the discussion you're having this morning with Wakili Ruth Tanui. Let's get more feedback from our socials. And from Kiambu says, I fear leaving because my husband provides everything for the children. What legal protection is there for mothers afraid of becoming homeless after leaving abuse? Wanjiku from Thika says, families sometimes tell women to endure for the sake of marriage. How do you know when enduring becomes dangerous, Wakili? Sharon says, if someone reports domestic violence and later forgives their partner, can they still seek protection again if the violence returns? All right, that is Sharon. Thank you so much for that question. Akinyi says, I watched my mother suffer abuse growing up and it affected me deeply. What impact does domestic violence have on children who witness it? And we also have the final feedback this morning. David from Machako says, what should someone do immediately after being assaulted at home, especially if they fear the abuser may attack again? Wakili, let's start from that particular point. What should somebody do immediately when the assault, you know, occurs? And how many hours is considered late? I'm looking at, you know, there's 24 hours after the abuse, we have 48 hours, we have 72 hours after the abuse. So what should somebody do immediately when the assault happens?
So, first of all, I would advise safety first. I think you should make sure first go to a safe place. It can either be a friend's place or a relative's place, or even just a public place whereby you feel more safe. And then secondly, the way you said evidence is very important. So the second option can be, depending on the circumstances, you can go to the police. You go and report it. You know, reporting in the police, that's evidence. That's already evidence. And also you report to the police that, you know, you're in danger. You're in danger based on these circumstances. Normally, of course, the way you've just said is just that these things are not fully implemented, because, you know, the normal circumstance based on I think the idea or the vision of this act was when you walk into a police station, you go to the gender-based violence desk, and they will have, they're supposed to take you now to the safe house. You're supposed to, but right now there are some safe houses that are, even I think Njeri, the one who has the Usikimia, I think there are safe houses that are, those most are privately owned. So those are, I would advise first of all, safety first. Safety first. Find a place where you're safe. Then secondly, go and report to the police. Don't forget also taking photographs is important, especially where there's assault. Maybe you have, like, it's important to take photographs in your phone. That's the best way. Just using your phone, that's already enough evidence that you can present before court. So long as you can just prove that was your phone that you used, and then going to the police, and then the next thing also I would advise going to the health center. It's important. So the best thing, they have said, it's just not changing those clothes that you are in, especially where there's sexual harassment, any attack in any way. Don't change those clothes that maybe you had first. So that at least by the time you go, they normally take those clothes and are part of the things that they'll use as evidence in a health facility. Normally it's supposed to be automatic when you go to the police. They're supposed to be the one to guide you to the health center. I think Nairobi Hospital has a 24-hour support system for gender-based violence if you're undergoing it. I think, yeah, Nairobi Hospital has one. But now, unfortunately, it's a Nairobi Hospital. What about now someone maybe in Meru, in Busia? Yeah, that's the sad bit. So that's why, but anyway, we can work with, so that's the best thing I can advise. Go to a police station. They're the ones supposed also to help with taking you to a health facility. Okay. Yeah, those are some of the things I can advise someone, especially now for him, he has made it clear. And then after that, don't forget also you can seek now the orders, interim orders, because I think this person also said if you are scared the abuser might still come back. Like it's a danger that has not already been vacated. So that's another thing. File an application in the nearest magistrate court seeking for interim orders, and normally court will give orders preventing this person from coming anywhere close to you. And these orders can be served through, you make sure when these orders, I normally advise people when you have such serious orders where you're preventing someone to do something, make sure serve it to the nearest police station. Even though the order has not said, it's very important, and have a contact so that in case anything happens, the police are aware. So it can be an easy thing. In case anything happens, the police are aware there are orders for this person not to come close to you. Yeah.
All right. You know, what happens now when somebody violates a protection order?
Yeah, so violation of protection order, according to the Act, there are two courts. First of all, you can be arrested for violating court orders. Secondly, the other second option, you can be fined. And surprisingly, the fine, you can be fined 100,000, or convicted. Sometimes court can do both. Fine you the 100,000, and you can go to jail for at least 12 months, 1 year, for a year. Yeah, which I feel is not that stringent in my opinion. Yeah. Considering what is involved. You know, some people, I think, especially people who are perpetrators, I feel there are people, someone even can be okay with paying the 100,000, especially if they are financially capable. Yeah. Someone even can, you know, and people have Kenya, you know, Kenya, there sometimes people feel they have the connections, they can ensure they are not taken to, they are not taken to, they are not sued. Or sorry, they are not imprisoned for the 1 year. Yeah. Yeah. I feel it's not that stringent enough. I think it should be made to even like 1 million to make it deterrent in a way. Because now, if you know, if I break this order, I only pay 100,000. Will you not be like, for someone who is financially capable, they will feel it's not. As opposed to if I'm to even 1 million, or they give an estimate 1 million to 10 million. You know, that will deter someone. Yeah. Be like, if I do this, I can be. And then the imprisonment also should be a good number of years. Because 1 year, someone can be like, that I don't feel that is that stringent enough for me to deter me. Yeah, anyway, but those are the consequences according to the Act when someone goes against the protection order.
Wakili, what happens, you know, after somebody has reported a case? And I know this is something that a lot of people might be wondering about. Okay, I've reported about it. Then do I go home? Do I continue with my life? What happens immediately after I reported this case?
Yeah, so depending, if you have, let's say for instance, let me talk about now maybe civil. You know, there are two circumstances. You might have reported to the police, or maybe you have filed a case in court. So if you have reported a case to, let's say for instance, now even the police, normally depending on the circumstances, if of course it's a situation that you cannot go, it's advisable, of course, not to go back to the same situation. Sometimes, of course, there's you know, we can't also assume everyone has a place to go. We normally like advise, anyway, that's why the safe houses were created. That's why for anyone who maybe was reported this, that's the place they're supposed to go to. And if not, me, of course, I would advise maybe going to a family member that you trust, or going to, like, for instance, like, going to basically just a place that you feel safe. Yeah. Is
it guaranteed that a protection order will guarantee somebody's safety, you know, that they won't be abused anymore? Is safety guaranteed?
No, unfortunately not. I won't lie to you, because remember, if court has already granted the order, yeah, you have the order. It's a piece of paper, you've been told you have protection orders, and now you'll be dependent on, remember, you'll depend on maybe the police, maybe for them to effect it. So sometimes there are situations where someone has a protection order and this person breaks it. And now it becomes, now you find this person might sometimes even get away with it. Because now if someone has broken an order, you have to go back to court filing for contempt. Like this person has gone against a court order, that was a direct court order. So that's why I feel there are no, as much as, yeah, it's a good move, a good step, I don't think there are serious measures that have been brought in regards to this. Because I feel they were saying, I compared with small claims, because small claims, they took it so serious, they even gave timelines, supposed to be within 2 months, the case is done. I feel the same thing should happen with domestic violence. Like there should be a timeline of when someone files, there should be clear procedures of what happens when this happens. You know, when, for instance, this thing is done within a short span of time, there should be clear guidelines on when the order has already been protected, who is supposed to assist in effecting it. These are domestic violence abuse. Maybe have dedicated police desks, or even the way there's land fraud section, whereby that's their role. Whenever someone has an order, that's their role to ensure that this person, if this person is, even like reliable call centers whereby someone can call if someone is going against the order. Someone even said, I think we borrowed this, normally most of our laws are borrowed. So I think you find most of our, we infect laws in a system whereby the judicial is not sensitized on it. Now you see, for instance, right now, where basically quote unquote laws do not work. Yeah. So that's why you find, as much as on paper the act looks very efficient and everything, but on implementation is where the problem comes in. So you find someone has a protection order, yes, but now especially if it's a person who doesn't have enough financial resources, and then you're going against a person who has very, very high financial resources. So what happens in such a scenario? Because now if you go, and remember, when someone goes against the order, you have to prove to court this person has broken the order, gone against the order. So sometimes it takes time before this happens. This person might have a very good lawyer who can come and try and support, like, of course, go against whatever you're saying. So to answer your question, I don't think protection orders are effective enough the way they should.
All right, and what you're talking about has, just taken me back to one of the feedback that we got, and it was Sharon from Kitengela. She was saying, if someone reports domestic violence and later forgives their partner, can they still seek protection if violence returns? Yes,
you can still seek protection, because it doesn't, the fact that you're forgiven that person doesn't take away your right to seek protection. Yeah, so like it's not like court will be like, no, you went back to this person, so we are not going to know. So yeah, you have a right to still seek for protection if this violence continues, because this is a family situation. Court understands. Forgiveness happens. You have, maybe it's a situation where you have children with this person, there's a relationship with this person, so that court cannot put in that factor to deny you your right. Yeah.
I wonder if the number of cases have increased for regarding men versus women who are reporting cases of domestic violence in police stations, hospitals, in courts. Have these numbers increased?
I feel it's still the higher numbers, of course, it's still women and children, mostly.
Women and children.
Yeah, women and children. For men, it's still, of course, there are men who still report. Even I think there's one who has sent in saying he's a man who has been in an abusive relationship, but he's scared of stigma. I think it's about the stigma part. There's one who had talked about that from the feedback we are getting. So I think it's still the women and the children are the ones that are most affected by this. And there's someone even who has asked a question she grew up in a situation where there was domestic violence, and she was asking if this affects children. Sadly, it's true. I was even reading some psychological document where the psychologists were trying to analyze why even some of these things repeat themselves. From research, they have stated that a person who has gone through a family, let's start with a boy or a man who has gone through, chances of this person becoming violent is very high. Of this child, when they grow up becoming violent, is very high. For the women, what happens is you start choosing such people. Like you find yourself attracted to a person who is violent, because this is something in your subconscious mind you feel like it's normal. it has been normalized. So that's why I feel seriously when children, especially, it's very important. That's why even I feel the act had a good intention, because when the act has talked about the psychological abuse of children, whereby a child has been put in such a situation, I think this is something that's supposed to be dealt with from when someone is young. It has happened when someone is still a child. So this person should go through, psychologists should be available for such a situation, whereby someone goes through, you know, the psychological help to assist them in dealing with this. Because now the problem is in Kenya, these things, you know, when it happens, sometimes the way you're saying, it goes unreported, or so someone grows up, someone grows up thinking it's normal. Yeah. That's why when it's something, the way we were saying, some people, even like educated people, they still feel it's okay for someone to be beaten. Someone educated can feel like I have to discipline my wife, you know, like as though the person is a child. They still, these are things, of course, that stem from how you have grown up, things you picked up when you're a child. Like you feel this is something that is normalized, that's been normalized. That's why when you find someone goes to the police station, it's very normal. A lot of people have said you go to the police station to go and report, like they're like, they start talking about mediation. They're like, haideni nyumbani tu muongee. Atini kitu. You see, they're not even taking it seriously from the beginning. Right.
Yeah. Wakili, we've come to the end of this conversation, but I'd love for you to wrap it up with, you know, solution. Let's talk solutions now. Where and how can now victims turn to for protection if, you know, we're talking about there are still gaps in law, we do not even have a domestic violence court, then where do these victims now turn to for solution that is guaranteed? Yeah,
so for me, I feel, sadly, despite the fact that we are saying there are gaps, that's what we have. Like those are the only things that we have at hand. So I would advise people just take advantage. You know, it's a silent stigma, but the law, the PDVA Act is trying to speak. It's like to stop silencing people, victims. So I feel if you're anyone who is undergoing this now, at least now that, like, sensitize yourself about these laws. Be like, at least now the way you have said, you know that you can file an application and you need evidence. So I'm just like, if you're going through this, don't be so stigmatized or socialized in a way that you feel this is normal. If it's in any situation that you are in, make sure you're collecting evidence. I know sometimes it's a situation, of course, it's easier said than done, but I feel like be in control in a way to make sure that you're collecting evidence. And I also feel like the government should take the initiative of sensitizing people about this. They should put up safe houses, provide rules, provide separate courts for this. But now for someone who's undergoing this, I feel like take the initiative. Like there are sadly, FIDA I think has pro bono lawyers who can assist in this. Like take advantage of the laws that are already here. Yeah, and don't feel the need of, you know, people, the way someone was saying, like, someone feels like, you know, it's something normal. Emotional abuse is not something that is normal. Economical abuse, whereby someone is making you not work, or someone is holding your finances that you're entitled to, that's something that is not normal. So that's something that, you know, and again, speaking up, I think, like, even the way we're having this session, I think now it's also making people be aware that this is something that can be, you know, you have a right to maybe make an application, go to the police and all that.
All right. Thank you so much, Wakili, for making time for us to have this conversation. That is Wakili Ruth Tanui. Tanui, right?
Yes.
Tanui. You know, sometimes I'm confused.
Yeah, it's Tanui. And Tanui.
Yes, it's Tanui. Thank you so much for making time, Wakili. We're talking about domestic violence and protection orders. Where can victims get help? Let's continue this conversation on our socials, TV47 Kenya on Facebook and on YouTube, on X at TV47 Digital. Point to note is that help exists, and as victims, you do not have to suffer in silence. You can tag me at Annie_Dida. My name is Annie Odida. I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. Tomorrow is a holiday, so I might see you on Thursday. Good morning. Stay right here. You're watching TV47.